The devil thought he had the final say in your story, but God just overturned the verdict. You weren't supposed to survive the betrayal. You weren't supposed to recover after what they did to you. The narcissist wanted you emotionally paralyzed, spiritually broken, and forever silenced. But here you are, standing, healing, trusting God more than ever, and now heaven is responding. You're not just about to receive a blessing. You're about to receive confirmation, undeniable, supernatural, and public, a miracle that proves once and for all that the hand of God has been on your life the entire time. And while you rise, those who lied, manipulated, slandered, and abused, the narcissists who thought God wasn't watching, are being handed over to the very judgment they tried to escape. Brace yourself. This isn't just restoration. This is divine reversal, divine confirmation. Heaven is speaking loud and clear. There is a kind of silence that doesn't simply fill a room. It swallows a soul. It's not the absence of noise, but the absence of answers. You've lived in that silence. You've prayed with hands trembling and heart aching, and the only response was the ticking of the clock. You've sat in your car after another long day, staring at the steering wheel, wondering if your obedience even mattered. You've held on to promises that seemed to stretch further and further into the distance, all while those who mocked you seemed to prosper. The world moved on, and you were left behind with nothing but your faith, bruised, quiet, but still alive. And that is what heaven calls sacred. You see, God doesn't applaud the loudest moments of faith. He honors the quietest ones, the moments where you stayed when it would have been easier to run, the moments you turned the other cheek when everything in you wanted to fight back, the nights you cried yourself to sleep but still whispered, "I trust you," the mornings you got out of bed, not because you felt strong, but because you refused to quit. These are the moments no one saw, but God recorded. Every tear, every tremble, every time you chose obedience over bitterness, mercy over retaliation, surrender over control. Heaven saw it all. Now the silence is breaking, not because you demanded proof, not because you manipulated the outcome, but because God, in His perfect timing, has decided that this is the moment your hidden obedience meets divine confirmation. The shift you're beginning to feel in your spirit is real. The stirring, the restlessness, the signs, the sudden clarity. They're not coincidences. They are the whispers of heaven preparing to thunder. God is about to speak so clearly in your life that every unanswered question will be silenced not by explanation, but by manifestation. This is not just breakthrough. This is a divine unveiling. It's when God pulls back the curtain and reveals what He was building behind the scenes all along. It's when the long nights begin to make sense, when the isolation starts to look like preservation, when the rejection finally looks like redirection, and you begin to understand, not with your mind, but with your spirit, that you were never being punished. You were being positioned. You obeyed when you had every reason not to. You believed when there was nothing to hold on to but the Word. You stayed soft when pain tried to harden you. And now, heaven is about to honor that faithfulness in a way that even your enemies will have to acknowledge. This confirmation will not come in whispers. It will be loud, public, undeniable. It will silence the doubts in your own heart and expose the lies of those who thought God had forgotten you. But most importantly, it will heal that last part of your soul, the part that wondered if any of it had been worth it. Yes, it was worth it. Every scar, every tear, every lonely step forward. It was seen. It was sacred. And now God is speaking. Not just to you, but through you. This confirmation is not only the answer to your cries, it's the beginning of a new chapter where heaven no longer hides what it has been preparing in secret. Get ready. Your obedience is about to echo through every room that once shut you out, and the voice of God will be louder than every lie that tried to keep you small. Obedience in the fire, and the reward that follows. Obedience is often romanticized, painted in soft colors, spoken of in sermons with triumph and light. But for those who have truly walked the narrow road, obedience doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like bleeding in silence while everyone else calls you stubborn. Sometimes it feels like watching everyone around you get their desires while you bury yours in the soil of surrender. It looks like walking away from the narcissist who said they loved you, even when your heart begged to stay. It looks like keeping your integrity in rooms full of manipulation, smiling while being ridiculed, staying faithful when you feel completely forgotten. You didn't obey God because it felt good. You obeyed because you were called, and that calling came with weight, with warfare, with spiritual tension so thick you couldn't always breathe through it. You obeyed even when people labeled you weak. You obeyed when you were misunderstood by your own family. You obeyed when you cried out to heaven and got no immediate response. You obeyed when your heart broke, your body ached, your finances dried up, and your hope stretched thin. That obedience wasn't polished, it was raw, gritty, costly, and God never looked away. Every time you wanted to fight back but stayed still, heaven honored it. Every time you cried but didn't curse, heaven collected those tears. Every time you felt like quitting but chose to believe anyway, heaven recorded it all. You were in the fire, not a physical one, but the kind that burns from within, the kind that tests your loyalty to God when the narcissist is shouting lies about you, when the door closes after you've done everything right, when friends become strangers and strangers become judges. The fire wasn't just about survival, it was about purification. It was about showing heaven, hell, and the people watching that your faith was real, and your God was worth it. And now, after all this time, something sacred is shifting. God doesn't forget the faithful. He doesn't turn a blind eye to those who stayed when it made no sense to stay. You thought you were overlooked, but in truth, you were being preserved. While the narcissist was busy building their empire on lies, God was building your foundation in truth. While they exalted themselves through manipulation, God was planting you deep so that when the wind comes, you won't fall. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. The fire didn't burn you, it refined you. Now comes the reward. Not just a blessing, not just a temporary breakthrough, but a divine reward, tailored specifically to your obedience. God is not unrighteous to forget your labor of love. And what's coming to you will not be ordinary. It will not be explainable. It will not be earned by connections, charm, or effort. It will be the kind of reward that makes people stop and stare. The kind that makes even your enemies say, "This had to be God." Because they watched you lose. They watched you walk away. They watched you struggle. And now they will watch you rise, not by revenge, but by righteousness. You didn't manipulate your way into this miracle. You obeyed your way into it. You prayed your way into it. You trusted your way into it. And God, who sees in secret, is about to reward you in the open. You don't have to justify what you lost in the process. You don't have to explain the pain or the patience. God knows the cost, and He pays well. The same fire that nearly broke you will become the altar on which He displays His glory. You will not only be restored, you will be respected. And not because you fought for recognition, but because you fought to remain faithful. Let the narcissist mock. Let the world forget. Let the season of silence stretch. Because when God rewards obedience, He does it in a way that removes all doubt. There will be no mistaking who opened the door, no confusion about why the favor found you. It will be obvious. This one obeyed when it hurt. This one honored me in the fire. And now, this one I will lift. If this is your story, if you've obeyed when it felt like no one noticed, comment below with the words, "I obeyed through the fire." Let heaven see your faith. Let hell know you survived. And let your spirit rise in expectation. Your reward is coming. The narcissist is being handed over to what they served. There comes a time when God no longer shields a person from the consequences of their own choices. For a while, it looked like they were getting away with it. The lies, the emotional manipulation, the gaslighting that made you question your own sanity. They moved through life with charm, false humility, and spiritual language that cloaked their agenda. They convinced others that you were the problem, while they sat at tables they didn't deserve, poisoning the minds of the very people you once trusted. And through it all, you waited, not for revenge, but for truth. At first it was hard to understand why God didn't step in sooner. Why would he allow someone so cruel, so calculated, to continue deceiving others while you bore the weight of their destruction? Why did the narcissist seem to thrive while you were left picking up the pieces of your reputation, your peace, your sense of self? But what you didn't see then was that God wasn't ignoring the injustice. He was allowing time for repentance, because that's who he is, merciful, patient, righteous. But now, that time is over. God, in his righteousness, does not tolerate arrogance forever. There comes a moment when he hands a person over to the very spirit they embraced, when a heart becomes hardened. Not out of ignorance, but out of willful defiance, God removes his covering, not as punishment, but as consequence. The narcissist did not just wound you, they rebelled against the image of God in you, and for that, they are now being delivered into the hands of what they served. They served manipulation, now they will be manipulated. They sowed deception, now they will be deceived. They distorted the truth, now truth will become their tormentor. There is a haunting kind of justice that doesn't come from fire or thunder. It comes from the slow unraveling of everything they tried to control. Doors they once walked through with ease will now be locked. Relationships they used to manipulate will collapse. The charm that once blinded others will now fall flat. And the worst part? They will know exactly why. They will feel the presence of God withdraw, and in its place will be a silence they cannot escape. Not because God is cruel, but because he is just. This is not the wrath of a petty God. This is the discipline of a holy one who protects the innocent and confronts the unrepentant. You may never see the moment it happens. You may never hear the cries of their conscience or read the regrets written across their sleepless nights. But rest assured, what they sowed in secret, they are now reaping in full, not by your hand, but by the hand of the one they dared to mock when they touched his child. And in that justice there is peace, because God's justice does not require you to become bitter or vengeful. It requires only that you trust him to balance the scales in his time and his way. You don't have to chase closure. The narcissist is already being pursued by the consequences of their own decisions. You don't have to explain what happened. Their own fruit is exposing them. You don't even have to hope for their downfall. It's already unfolding, slowly, invisibly, relentlessly. They are not just facing earthly loss. They are experiencing spiritual abandonment, the terrifying weight of life without grace. While you are rising, they are unraveling. While you are being healed, they are being haunted. While you are stepping into destiny, they are slipping into delusion. Let God be God. Let justice run like a river. And let your heart remain free, knowing that what was done to you has not been ignored, overlooked, or forgotten. The one who sits on the throne has ruled in your favor. And now, the narcissist must face not just what they've done, but who they become. This miracle will come suddenly and without warning. There are seasons that feel like forever, long stretches of days where nothing moves, nothing changes, and hope begins to rust in the corners of your heart. You know what it's like to live with expectancy that slowly turns into exhaustion. You've prayed, you've fasted, you've believed. You've whispered the promises of God back to Him through tears and silence and aching disappointment. But after a while, even the most steadfast heart begins to wonder if it's waiting in vain. Maybe you've reached a point where you no longer expect the miracle to come, not because you doubt God, but because you've simply grown used to the silence. And that, beloved, is precisely where the miracle begins. God has a way of moving when everything in the natural says it's too late. He has a pattern of stepping in when the crowd has gone home, when the body lies in the tomb, when the boat has drifted too far from shore. His miracles don't come on your timeline. They come when all human strategy fails, when logic gives way to wonder. That's because God isn't interested in sharing credit. He allows the delay so that when the breakthrough comes, no one, not even you, will be able to say it was by your effort. What's coming for you won't knock first. It won't send a calendar reminder. It won't come with a countdown or fanfare. It will arrive suddenly, like rain after a long drought, like light flooding a dark room, like a whisper that breaks through years of noise. One moment, everything will look the same job, the same loneliness, the same unanswered prayers. But then something will shift. A phone call, a letter, a promotion, a conversation that opens a door you didn't even know existed. You'll step into a moment that feels almost surreal. Not because it's out of reach, but because it's finally arrived. This is the nature of God's timing. It often looks like He's doing nothing, right up until the moment He does everything. And when He does, it's not a slow trickle. It's an outpouring. It's acceleration. It's the kind of blessing that redeems time. The years you thought were wasted will suddenly make sense. The silence will be revealed as strategy. The closed doors will be understood as divine protection. You'll realize that heaven was never ignoring you. It was preparing something that required your maturity, your trust, and your full surrender. And when the miracle comes, you won't feel anxious. You'll feel ready. Because everything you've walked through has built you for this. Every moment of delay became a lesson in patience. Every betrayal taught you how to hear God's voice above the noise. Every loss humbled your heart so that pride wouldn't poison the promise. You didn't just wait, you were being forged. You didn't just survive, you were being made whole. That's why when the miracle finally comes, it won't just be something that happens to you. It will be something that confirms what's already been happening within you. This is how God moves for His children. Not with hesitation, but with precision. He is not slow, He is strategic. And just because you haven't seen movement on the outside, doesn't mean He hasn't been orchestrating divine alignment behind the scenes. Every piece is falling into place. Every delay has a purpose. And when it all converges in one sacred moment, you'll know, without a doubt, that what just happened could only be explained by heaven. The gift you're receiving will publicly silence the lies. There's a particular kind of pain that doesn't bruise the skin but lingers in the soul, the pain of being misrepresented. When someone rewrites your character in the minds of others, not with truth, but with poison disguised as concern. You've watched them twist the narrative, control the optics, cast themselves as the victim while you stood in the ashes, stripped of your dignity, unsure if anyone would ever know what really happened. And in that quiet devastation you chose silence, not because you were weak, but because you knew that defending yourself to blind hearts would only feed their delusion. You let the narcissist talk. You let them manipulate the crowd. You let them paint pictures in places you were not invited to respond. And while their lies echoed through circles you once called safe, you returned to your secret place, to the only court that mattered, and whispered, "God, you know the truth." That whisper became a covenant. That silence became sacred. Because when you chose to step back, God stepped in. What's coming to you now is more than restoration. It is righteous reversal. Not only will the truth come to light, but it will be wrapped in a testimony so undeniable that no rebuttal will be necessary. The blessing God is preparing will not just lift you, it will clear you. It will be so precise, so targeted, that it will address the very things they accused you of. You won't need to give speeches or post explanations. God's favor will become your defender. The fruit in your life will speak louder than the slander in theirs ever could. This is the justice of heaven. It doesn't just vindicate, it redeems reputation. It rebuilds honor. It reaches into the soil where you were buried and causes a garden to grow, not in secret, but in full view. The very people who heard the lies will now witness your rise. They will watch as God sets a table for you, not in private, but in the presence of your enemies, not to shame them, but to show them what His faithfulness looks like when it's attached to someone who refused to bow to bitterness. The beauty of this gift is that it cannot be faked. It's not a curated comeback, it's divine vindication. It carries the weight of heaven's signature, and when it falls on your life, the lies will no longer matter. Not because they didn't hurt, but because the truth has finally taken up space. The gift you're about to receive isn't just for you. It's for every person who ever wondered whether God truly defends the ones who choose quiet integrity over loud revenge. This is how God silences lies, not with noise, but with evidence, not with vengeance, but with glory. And when it arrives, the narrative won't just shift, it will collapse, not because you forced it, but because heaven authored the ending. The narcissist will be haunted by their own evil. There is a justice that doesn't wear a robe or hold a gavel, a justice that unfolds in silence, not in spectacle. It doesn't always look like public downfall or visible consequence. Sometimes the deepest judgment is internal, when the weight of one's own evil becomes too loud to ignore, when the very lies they told begin to echo in the hollows of their conscience. And for the narcissist, that's exactly what's happening. They thought they had moved on. They thought cutting you off meant cutting off conviction. They built new lives, new circles, even new victims, believing that if they rewrote the story often enough, they could escape the original truth. But God doesn't allow injustice to rest comfortably. He doesn't permit cruelty to go unanswered when it was inflicted on one of His own. There's a holy unease that begins to follow those who harm without repentance, and no amount of distraction, attention, or control can silence it. Now they lie awake at night with your voice in their memory. The moment they gaslit you, it replays. The time they mocked your pain, it resurfaces. That look in your eyes when you finally walked away, it haunts them because deep down they know. They know it wasn't you who broke the relationship. They know it was their pride, their manipulation, their cowardice in the face of truth. And no matter how much they try to mask it, they are not at peace. Their new life is stained with the shadow of the one they destroyed. They smile, but it's hollow. They perform, but they're restless. And the worst part is that the very tactics they used to control others are now unraveling in their own hands. They are not in control anymore. The consequences are, their own choices have become their tormentors. What once served them now enslaves them. This is not about wishing harm. It's about recognizing that God is not mocked. When someone continually resists conviction, when they harden their hearts and silence every opportunity to turn around, eventually the only voice left is the one inside, and it screams. That scream cannot be medicated. It cannot be outrun. It grows louder with every smile they fake, every memory they suppress, and every relationship that fails under the weight of their unresolved guilt. And so they spiral, quietly, invisibly, but undeniably, not because anyone cursed them, but because they sowed seeds of destruction and now must live among the thorns. While you are healing, they are unraveling. While you are rebuilding, they are haunted, not by you, not by others, but by themselves. The version of themselves they can no longer deny, the truth they buried and now can't escape. This is the justice of God, not loud, not rushed, but thorough. You're entering a season of supernatural restoration. Restoration from God is never about returning to what once was. It's about stepping into something greater than what was lost. You didn't just go through betrayal, heartbreak, abandonment, and silence for no reason. What you endured wasn't random suffering. It was the tilling of spiritual ground for a harvest that could only grow in deep, broken soil. The season ahead of you isn't compensation, it's transformation. It's not about getting back what was taken. It's about receiving what could have never been given had you not gone through the fire. There's a unique kind of restoration that comes to those who surrendered everything they couldn't understand to the hands of a God they still trusted. And that's what you did. When the narcissist stripped you of your identity, you let God rebuild it from the inside out. When people questioned your value, you let God redefine it. When you were tempted to defend yourself, you chose to let heaven speak on your behalf. And now, because you didn't rush the process or try to rebuild your life on broken pieces, God is building something entirely new, not as a patchwork of your past, but as a divine unveiling of your purpose. What you're about to walk into isn't fragile, it's fortified. It's not shallow affirmation, it's deep-rooted confidence, birthed in the presence of God. The peace coming to you will not be dependent on people behaving better. The love entering your life won't come with conditions, control, or performance. It will be authentic, heaven-sent, and healing to every place that once ached. You won't have to beg for clarity, for provision, or for companionship. You'll find yourself surrounded not by noise, but by substance, not by attention seekers, but by soul healers, not by trauma bonds, but by spirit-led connections. And most importantly, you will look in the mirror and recognize yourself again. Not the version of you they tried to break, not the shell of the person you became to survive, but the real you. The you that laughs without fear of being mocked. The you that prays without wondering if God is listening. The you that walks boldly into rooms you used to shrink in. Because you are not the wounded one anymore. You are the healed one, the anointed one. The one who endured the stripping and is now clothed in glory, not because you earned it, but because God always intended it. This new season is not a reward, it's a resurrection. You're not starting over, you're rising higher. Everything the enemy thought would destroy you has become the very soil that's birthing your next level. And every place you were humiliated will now be the place of honor. Not because you fought for it, but because heaven decided it was time. This is your moment. This is your restoration. And it is supernatural. And when people ask how you made it through, how you didn't lose your mind, your heart, or your faith, you'll smile not out of pride, but out of reverence, because you'll know it wasn't your strength that carried you, but God's mercy. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was the hand of a faithful God who never forgot you and who chose this moment, this hour, to bring you back better than before. You didn't just survive, you were preserved. And now, by the will of God, You are becoming the proof that restoration is real, and that no wound is too deep for heaven to heal.